Hello, everyone. It is Pal Pondron Weather coming to you with another update. I appreciate you tuning in. If you like weather-related content, please subscribe to my channel. And also stay to the end because we're going to be playing a little fun little game and a giveaway. All right, so let's get right to it. On today's update, we're going to talk about Tropical Storm Dorian that actually formed yesterday in the Caribbean. All right. So it's got about 40 miles per hour winds. At the latest update at 1 o'clock, it is getting a little bit more organized. It's moving west at 14 miles an hour. It's moving into an area where these storms typically this time of year, when it moves into the Caribbean, they tend to die off. The atmosphere isn't very conducive. It's going into a pretty high shear environment, but it does, and it's small. It's really small, really compact, but it does have it making a westerly trajectory all the way into approaching Puerto Rico by Wednesday morning as a minimal hurricane. All right. So, and it's looked to pass just a little bit south of Puerto Rico, but head into the Dominican Republic where they've got pretty high elevation in the mountains. So, we'll see if this thing kind of survives. Usually, as it hits the mountains, it tends to kind of break apart, and especially we'll go over the environment that it's going in. But as of right now, we have a minimal hurricane approaching Puerto Rico, possibly by Wednesday morning. Okay. Here is the dust environment right now. As you can see, there's a lot of dust in the Caribbean, but if it makes its way out of the Caribbean, a lot of the dust subsides. So that, if it like I said, if it makes the elevation, does get torn apart with the upper elevations of the Dominican Republic, then we might have to watch out on the other side after a Thursday or Friday of this upcoming week. All right. So here's kind of the shear environment, and it kind of tells you the exact same thing. There's a lot of shear where you see the reds and the greens. That's where you have some shear environment. But once you pass and start getting into the Gulf of Mexico, that's where the shear really subsides, and it could reform on the other side. So even though it might die off in the mountains, a piece of this might still hold together and kind of possibly reform after it hits the mountains earlier on in the week. Here's the water temperature. As you can see, this time of year, we're going into more of a peak season, which is September the 10th. And you always got to watch out for storms because we've only had 4 and we averaged 12. So we have a long ways to go to get the average. But we're about to hit the bulk of the season, where you can see we've got elevated water temperatures running 1, 2, 3 degrees above normal. All right, and here's a model I look at a lot, which is the JMA, the Japanese model. It actually shows that sinking air coming in on the backside. So most of the models with Dorian have it fall apart as it hits the islands, after it hits the islands with the European and the GFS. And I can kind of show you with the sinking air. But as you go into the Gulf of Mexico again, where that shear subsides and those warmer temperatures, you can see the shear is kind of subsiding there. So we still have to watch out for this thing, even though it might fall apart over the mountains. All right, so here's some of the model guidance of what might take place with Dorian. You can kind of see it's all over the map, right? After it hits these islands, like I said, these things it's really small, compact. It's a small, compact storm. So it's not going to take much. Wherever it's going to hit, it's going to pack a pretty good punch with some heavy rains over Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. But after it surpasses that, it's kind of all up in the air right now. It could swing up. We could go into the Gulf. So we'll see how this all plays out. But here is what they call the MJO, the Madden-Julie oscillation. We're in favorable phase 2 and 3 right now, and that's why Dorian was able to develop. But we're going into more of a non-favorable phase environment into phase 4. And there's only pockets of phase 4 that might try to develop. And I was going to show you that here right now. So here is what phase 4 looks like. So if you look in the blue sections, that's when you have kind of the sinking air environment that's not as favorable for development. But as we go into later this week, all right, you see this feature up here, which would be Erin. I'll get to that shortly. It goes into a favorable environment, but also this little feature by the Gulf of Mexico. What might happen is we got a front coming in on Tuesday into Texas. All right. So by Thursday, it's going to stall out and kind of back up north. But a piece of that might swing into the Gulf, kind of a boundary over the Gulf of Mexico. And if a piece of Dorian breaks off into the Gulf, it would go into a more of a highly favorable environment to some sort of spin up off a low pressure that would be developing in the Gulf. I'm talking a week from now. Of some sort of spin up in the Gulf. So you're going to have to watch this area after Dorian plays out and after Erin swings off out to sea. We could be watching at some sort of other development, potentially off a stalled front in the Gulf of Mexico. So that's my next system I've got my eyes on. All right, so here's your favorable environment. This is going into September, so I figure I'd show you this of the likely tracks. Like I said, 60% of all storms happen in that time frame of August 15th to October 15th. So we're going into a time frame that we have to watch out for every little tropical wave and whatnot. And here's the most likely paths of what, if a tropical system does form, where it would likely go and where it would go. So as you can see, these come off in the main development region this time of year, and they swing up in the Caribbean. As you see this track, everybody remembers Michael last year. It kind of swung up in the Gulf and got wrapped up in that loop eddy in the Gulf, and it really was able to develop, and it ended up being a Category 5, upgraded to a Category 5 6 months later at landfall. But here's the kind of the likely tracks of what may take place in September. Here's a little, I'll touch on this real quick. That was a little tropical wave that came up into the Gulf, never really formed, but all it was a heavy rainmaker, and it's still producing a heavy rainmaker. And we talked about it's going to hit Texas, Louisiana, mainly Louisiana, and it's still producing heavy rains all the way into the next several days into the Louisiana off that tropical wave. All right, so here's that feature we talked about last week on the other tropical update. Dorian formed before Erin did, all right? But this has about a 90% chance of developing from the NHC. Here's the current satellite picture off the northeast coast. It's kind of taking its sweet time. Again, this is an old stalled frontal boundary that it's playing off of. And here's the latest guidance from the NHC that has Dorian moving west 14 miles an hour, but has this system moving up northeast. So I think this thing is really going to start to develop over the next, it'll probably be a storm by later on today, if not tomorrow for sure. It'll be Tropical Storm Erin. A lot of the guidance has this really developing and possibly going into a Category 2 hurricane. But since it's taken its sweet time to develop, it's going to get wrapped up into the front and possibly, hopefully swing off northeast. And all we'll see is kind of a expanded swells into the Gulf. So here's kind of a guidance from one of the latest European models of wave heights, what they're thinking it'd be like on by Thursday. And it's showing some sort of Category 1, Category 2 hurricane and off the northeast coast that's producing 30-foot, 40-foot waves off at sea. So you might get some larger swells off the northeast coast there later on down the line, later this week. All right. So that was kind of a quick update of how I think this is going to play out with Dorian and Erin and the little tropical feature in the Gulf later on in a week from now. But hey, I appreciate you guys tuning in and staying with me. But I was wanting to play a little game here. Here's one of my POW rain gauges that I have in my store. It's you can to order one. You can there's a banner at the top you can click on, but I'm actually giving this away. So I figured we play a little game where if you guess the city and state or where you think the next tropical storm is going to make landfall, I will mail you a POW rain gauge in the mail. So please comment below on where you think the next tropical storm that might hit the United States, name the city and state, and whoever gets closer, I'll mail this into the mail. I appreciate you guys tuning in and staying with me. If you like the weather-related content, please consider subscribing to my channel, and I'll catch me in the next video. Be sure to watch the other videos of mine, like the fall outlook and the winter outlook, and catch me in the next video, or I protect you before and after the storm.